My name's Laura Speer. I introduced myself earlier. I'm at the Annie Casey Foundation in Baltimore. I'm very happy to be here today, honored to be in the room with all of you who do the hard work every day of educating kids in classrooms, but also making policy that can affect millions of children across the country. So I'm very happy to be here. Some of you may know the Annie Casey Foundation in various different ways. For most people, it's probably the NPR sponsorship that we give, where you say, "Oh, that name sounds vaguely familiar." If you're an NPR listener, that's probably why you know that. But we are the largest private philanthropy in the United States that's specifically focused on improving lives of disadvantaged kids and families. We have been around for quite a while. We were created given as an endowment by the founder of UPS and his family, Jim Casey, and named in honor of his mother. And so I work in the policy reform and advocacy component of the Casey Foundation, mainly on the Kids Count project. Some of you may know Kids Count. We've been doing Kids Count for 25 years. Actually, we just released the latest Kids Count data book about 3 weeks ago, and which is an effort to raise the visibility of kids' issues and really to track child well-being at the state level, at the national level. And so what I'm going to do in my presentation is run through a little bit of what some of the findings from this year's report, but more than that, kind of, I think, set the stage for what are the key metrics that are really important to track for kids if we want to see them be successful adults. So I'm going to go ahead and get rolling, and hopefully this will all work. Yeah. It's a little blurry, so I'm going to try to talk through I have lots of pictures of kids, so that's I don't need to talk through that part, but the data component I will talk about. Every year in the U.S., 11,000 babies are born, and each of those babies represents the opportunity for a new life, but also the opportunity for success in adulthood. And every parent, when that baby is born, at that moment, wants nothing more than that child to be as successful as they can be. But what we know of those 11,000 babies that are born in the U.S., they're not all going to face the same opportunities for success. Many of them will have barriers that they have to overcome, and that their parents have to overcome. About half of them will be born into low-income families. About 1 in 4 will be born into immigrant families. 1 in 3 will be the child of a single mother. 1 in 4, about. So they're certainly, they face different barriers, but what their parents want for them at the moment of birth is the same. And when we think about what's the child population today and what the child population will be, and here's where you probably can't see, and I'll talk through it. Today, the child population today is very different than it was even when we started Kids Count 25 years ago in terms of the demographic composition. Today, about 47% of children in the country are kids of color. But by 2018, the kids of color will be the majority of the child population, and by 2050, they will be a significant majority. This is a relatively short amount of time for quite a significant dramatic change. And what this means is that as I'm going to go through the data and the slides in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the median, but we know that that's a median, and that for lots of kids, they're very far from even meeting that median, which you'll see in a minute is not all that great in most places. But this is the challenge that we face, and it makes it even more important that we don't leave any kids behind, because they really are. The kids are going, as was just said earlier, they really are more than just the future workforce. They're the future leaders of a very different country by 2050 than even what we see today. So I did this slide really because this is part of how we think about child well-being, how we think about what are the important metrics to measure success. This is based on many, many decades of research. We actually know quite a lot now about what it takes what are the key things that kids have to, sort of the milestones that kids have to achieve on the pathways to successful adulthood. But these particular milestones are rooted very much in the Social Genome Project, in the findings of the Social Genome Project at the Brookings Institution, which looks at what are the things that are most closely connected with being middle class by middle age, which is about middle income by about 35 years of age. Sadly, that is middle age. I hate to say it, given the median age in the room, but you know, I'm past it as well. So, it really does start with with birth, starting with being born at a healthy birth weight. We know that's from the sort of the beginning of the child's life, a very important milestone that they need to hit, because if they're not born at a healthy birth weight, they're much more likely to face developmental challenges right from the get-go. I have preschool enrollment here, mainly because I'm going to show you that data, but it really is about attendance in a high-quality early childhood program. And I know folks after me will talk much more about that, so I'm not going to get into the details as much. In middle childhood, the metrics around the basic reading and math skills are really important. There's a lot around test scores now, but this is especially being able to read by 4th grade, because up until the 4th grade, kids are learning to read. At 4th grade and beyond, they have to use reading to learn everything else. So that metric is especially important. And being able to do math in sort of later on in childhood, in middle childhood, is important, because that's actually it's very closely connected to whether or not they're going to be successful in college, that 8th grade math score. In adolescence, there are two things that are sort of avoidance, and you'll see they're sort of at the bottom of the pathway. Avoidance of deep involvement with the justice system. There's a big difference between whether or not a young person sort of gets in trouble and whether or not that young person goes deeply into the juvenile justice system. A lot of times that has less to do with what they did and more to do with the system that they're confronted with. But getting involved with the juvenile justice system is certainly something that gets you off track. And having a baby in the teen years is another. So delaying childbearing until adulthood is an important milestone to being able to continue on the pathway. Successfully completing high school, of course, and then being in school or working in that sort of early adulthood time, and then getting that post-secondary credential. These are the metrics that are in kind of the most important, the things that are lifted up most closely by the Social Genome Project, and I'm going to show you some of the data connected to these milestones. Oh, sorry. This is the next component. Those are the milestones that the kids have to hit. There's also the context of the family and the community that are really important. Being in a household with a householder that has at least a high school diploma significantly improves the likelihood of success for kids. Being in a two-parent family, again, very important, not only for the economic resources that it brings, but also for the support and parenting that happens, especially in a two-parent family that's low conflict. Being in a family with income above 200% of the poverty line certainly helps. And then living in a community where the poverty rates are low is important, because when kids are in a high poverty community, the resources that are available to them on a wide range of things tend to be a lot less than those in a higher income community. Okay, so now the data on the milestones. Today in the U.S., 92% of all babies are born at a healthy birth weight. That's relatively, it's 9 out of 10. However, the rates vary significantly by race, especially for African American kids. The rates are lower. About 46% of 3 and 4-year-olds attend pre-K in the United States. There is variation across the country and across different demographic groups, but not as much variation as in some of the other indicators that we track. And this is a measure that has improved over the last 10 years or so. About 44% of 4th graders are proficient readers. And about a similar rate are also proficient, actually exactly the same rate, according to the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is a test that the National Center for Education Statistics does every year. A similar 44% are proficient in math in 8th grade. And again, these rates vary dramatically, especially for low-income kids and for African American, American Indian, and Latino kids. 93% of girls make it through adolescence without having a baby. And this is actually the highest rate in history of the United States. This is one of the indicators that has improved the most over the last 25 years. Since I'm using 25 years because we just did the 25th Kids Count data book, and that's the time frame that we looked at, and it actually has improved for all racial and ethnic groups. However, the rate of adolescent births in the United States still continues to be the highest among our peer countries. So, but I do want to mention that the improvement in the adolescent birth rate has actually occurred across all of our sort of peer countries, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon that's happening across the world. 81% of high school students graduate on time. Again, this is an all-time high, and something that has improved over the last 25 years. However, only 39% of 25 to 29-year-olds have at least a 2-year certificate or degree or better. The rate is only 19% for Latinos and American Indians, and about 25% for African American kids. So one thing, this is something that I hesitate to say because there's not as much research around this particular phenomenon. However, when you look at the data in this way, you can really see that about 40% of kids are going to pre-K, are hitting the 4th grade, 8th grade milestones, and getting that AA degree. It's not linear. It's certainly not. There's not data points to connect each of those kids one by one, because many of them, they may go off track. They may not hit every single one of those milestones along the way, but it's an interesting thing. It's also the fact that only 39% of 25 to 29-year-olds are getting that AA degree or higher it's a failing grade. If kind of we think about what the milestones we want kids to achieve and what we want for everyone. So just very quickly, the data on the family and community, couple of those measures. 85% of children in the U.S. have a parent with a high school diploma. However, only 63% of Latino kids have an adult in the household who has a high school diploma. This is important, of course, for the kinds of jobs that the parents will be able to get and the kinds of money that will come into the household, and whether or not that job has benefits and lots of things, but also for the educational support that the parent can provide to the child. 68% of children live in two-parent families in the U.S. However, only 37% of African American kids do, and this says a lot about the child poverty rate and the resources that are coming into households. And 55% of children, only 55% of children, live in families with incomes above 200% of the poverty line, and this is in the U.S. overall, and it's about $45,000 for a family of 4. Only 55% of kids live in those households. So that gives you a sense of where we are in terms of the median in the United States. So I included one map. I apologize in advance from the folks in Alaska. I know that Alaska is way, 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 way too small on this map. I know that it would be half the map. I apologize. I saw a few T-shirts as I was walking around that had the U.S. with a big Alaska in the middle of it, and so I apologize. This is from our most recently released education, the rankings in our data book. We took 4 of those indicators that I showed you. We used the 3 and 4-year-olds who are enrolled in preschool, 4th grade reading, 8th grade math, and then high school graduation rates. And we ranked the states based on those 4 indicators. And what you can see is that the states that are in the south and southwest tended to be in the lowest part of the rankings, and those in the Northeast and upper Midwest to a certain degree tended to be in the higher. So the red, the darker the color, the lower the ranking. Sorry, I should have said at the beginning. The lighter the color, the higher the ranking. And the states that were ranked in the top 5 were Massachusetts, New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut. The states in the lower 5 were West Virginia, Louisiana, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Nevada was ranked the lowest, based on those 4 measures. We do this data book every year. We actually look at we have 16 indicators. So we look at data for family, community, health, and economic well-being, in addition to education. So folks you're welcome to see. You can get all the data for your state on the data center, the Kids Count Data Center. I'm going to show you the website in a minute. You can actually access it on your mobile device if you want. We have a mobile site. It's datacenter.kidscount.org. All of the indicators that I just showed you throughout the pathway, as well as in the education rankings, we have the data at the state level, and many of them at the county and local level. We work with a range of state advocates, so hopefully you know who does Kids Count in your state, and you can go to them to get the resources, the data that you need to make the case that you want to make in terms of what's going on for kids in your state. And so my contact information is here, and you're all welcome to get in touch with me after. I think we'll probably do questions at the end. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it.